Welcome back, everybody. We're back on the channel with Ashley. Hey, Ashley.
Hey.
So, we are going to talk a little bit about job offers after
Mhm,
graduate school. It's a very common
mhm.
question that our students throw our way. It's something I encourage as a financial therapist, but also as a mental health leader, because they're like, I don't know, is this a good offer or not? So, I find that very trusting, but they're like, I'm going to throw this to Khara and ask. And Ashley, have you
Mhm.
had that happen too with students? Like,
Oh,
hey,
absolutely. Yeah. And I love those conversations. And I think it just reminds me how important it is to be transparent with anyone about businesses and income and, really removing the taboo that money has been over the last
mm-hmm.
decades, you know.
Yeah, like we don't talk about it. I'm
Mhm.
thinking back to when I graduated from my grad program, and luckily I had a mentor where I came back and said, "Here's my job offer. Is this good?" And she's like, "No, ask for more." And
Oh,
because I had
wow.
no education, I wouldn't have
Mhm.
known if it was a good or bad number.
Mhm.
It was my first professional job outside of
Mhm.
graduate school, right? So I was excited, I was ready. And she's like, "Nope, ask for more." And I think I got like 10,000 more based on
Oh my
her
gosh.
mentorship.
That's
And
huge.
so back then, drop in the bucket, now it'd be a different number.
Mhm.
But I want to pay that forward. And that's why we're creating
Mhm.
this video. We want to talk about some of the costs of doing business, what you're looking for in an offer. There's a lot of complexity here because the big distinction is this an employee position or is this a
Right.
contractor position? So,
Mhm.
Ashley, what would you say about, let's start with employee, what people need to think about with an offer?
I would say first and foremost, recognizing that the dollar sign amount that you're given isn't the whole package, right? Like if you're a W-2 employee, you're probably also hopefully receiving some benefits, health insurance, hopefully supervision even. And with all of that comes things like payroll taxes for the employer, paying into Social Security, paying into, we're in Colorado, so family and FMLA stuff. And so recognizing that while that dollar sign number might be lower than perhaps a 1099 hourly rate, the employer is also providing a lot of other things that cost them quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something I didn't learn until years into my career. And I did take the first offer out of
Yeah.
grad school, and probably shouldn't have. But
Mm,
I didn't know any better, and I didn't have a mentor. Well, my mentor was the one hiring me, so there was just a different offer, different relationship there.
sure, sure. Yeah, I think what we want students and early career clinicians to hear is that group practices are taking on some risk in hiring you. I mean, one of
Yeah.
my group practice colleagues said it takes, it could be $15,000 of onboarding just to have the
Yeah.
hours spent to get them up to
Hmm.
speed,
Hmm.
trained in the EHR. So there's all these fees. So when people try to calculate, hey, we charge a client $120 for their session and I get this much out of that 120, this group practice must be making bank. We're missing all of the expenses that the group
Hmm.
practice has, everything from the
Right.
building to utilities to marketing. Marketing
Hmm.
is a big expense, if I'm being
Hmm.
honest. EHR
Absolutely.
fees, payroll, maybe they have a biller, maybe they
Mhm.
have someone
Admin.
doing like admin or like
Mhm.
intakes or answering the phones for them, a VA. There's lots of other expenses that aren't being factored into when you just crunch the here's what the client gets charged and here's what I get paid as the
Hmm.
clinician rendering the service. So
Right.
each group practice is going to be a little different of what their overhead is. That's a fancy term for those expenses. That's how
Mhm.
do we keep the lights on? How do we keep the doors open? What do we need to make to continue or maintain the business? So as people are watching this video, stay curious about that. Maybe you have some
Mhm.
questions you want to ask your future employer about this, if that would feel good to you and feel empowering for you. But know that they have a lot on the back end. It's not just that they're
Mhm.
paying themselves millions of dollars and you're getting scraps. That's never the case. Now, I will highlight Carla D'Agostino Hill, who has a little dashboard that she created. And now, thanks to some of the conversations we've had, of like, please make this available to other group practices.
Mhm.
Um, we'll link it here below the video, but it's a little dashboard that's like, this is how much it costs to bring on a new clinician. And so it
Mhm.
broke it all down. It's like, here's how much it costs for training them and bringing them in and marketing materials. And all of a sudden it illuminated, wow, this is a big investment in bringing on a
It
new
is.
employee. And so
Mhm.
I love that that's very visible. It's like a
Mhm.
dashboard, Excel spreadsheet kind of thing. And it helps people maybe change the narrative of, oh my gosh, you're making so much money off of me as a brand new clinician. That's not her vibe. That's not most of the group practice owners that we connect with.
Right.
That's not their intention. So I love that we now have a tool that group practice owners can show, hey, this is what it costs to bring you on. And that might change some of those
Yeah,
dynamics.
for sure.
Thoughts on that, Ashley?
I love that. And I'm big on transparency. When I had a group practice, I showed all of my people my insurance contracts so they knew what I was getting paid. They knew how much I was paying my biller every month. They knew how much I paid for EHR. They knew how much I paid for their marketing stuff. And so I recognize that that's not everyone's practice, but that was really important to me to be able to communicate, hey, this is what I can offer you, and this is why. And I've had some really cool discussions with those people over the years. As they've all moved on now, but one came to me and said, hey, I have this offer from Sondermind and Headway, like, can you match this? And I said no. And I said, here's why I can't match this. And she was very grateful for that education. And now she's on her own in private practice, and I'm so proud of her. But we continue to have these discussions because she's thinking about growing. And it's these aha moments of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe all that you had to do and all that you had to pay. And it's like, yeah. And I appreciate her coming back and sharing that insight with me. Because you're right, it is really easy for us to be like, oh, they charge 200 an hour and I get 35 of that, and that's BS. Um, and hopefully there's not many people taking advantage in very egregious ways.
Right.
But I think for the most part, it is much more expensive to run a successful business than people think it is.
Yeah, so we're just going to kind of normalize each person's business is different, but there are some predictable expenses that we've named so far in this
Mhm.
video of like, yep, that's going to be part of it just to keep it running and just to have clients coming in the door.
Mhm.
So on the other side of this is the 1099 contractor.
Yep. Mhm.
That was my business model, so I can definitely say I have a bias towards contract because
Yeah.
that's what I did for 9 years.
hmm
Of course, Colorado is moving away from contractor positions, kind of like California, where it's no longer a thing because there has been some concern of overusing or misusing contractors and
hmm
treating them like employees, but then not giving them those benefits they deserve.
Right.
So when you hear contractor, what comes to mind when we think about how they're different than an employee?
Honestly, the first two words that came to my mind were flexibility and freedom because
Mm,
the employer or the group practice owner can't make that person do anything. And
yeah.
so, in terms of schedule, in terms of time off, in terms of what service they provide, even, there is no dictating or directing the 1099 what to do at any time. I really like being a 1099 because of that, but I'm also in a position where I don't need benefits like I did 5 or 6 years ago because I have a spouse who provides a lot of the benefits that we need.
Right.
And so when we think about things like retirement funds, health insurance, even malpractice insurance, all of those are going to fall on the 1099 person to, fulfill for themselves.
Mm,
And those also come at a cost. Um, so that's a consideration too, of like, yeah, I want to be making more per hour. I think that's very attractive to a lot of 1099s, but there's also a lot that those people have to set up for themselves financially, that maybe a W-2 employee just doesn't think about because it's automatic.
right. The big one being taxes. If like this number
Mhm.
looks higher because you're going to pay the taxes on
Mhm.
it later
Mhm.
as the
Right.
contractor versus the group practice owner.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean everything you named and like even supplies, like a contractor
Yep.
is responsible for their own equipment of like a laptop, a working
Mhm.
car, whatever it takes to
Right.
get to do their job. You get paid based on invoicing the group practice owner, right? So
Mhm.
whether that's
Yep.
notes in an EHR or a truly old school invoice saying I saw this
Invoice,
many
yeah.
clients at this
Yep.
many hours, that's truly a 1099 model. Contractors aren't allowed to have supervision. We've said that in multiple videos on this channel. As a contractor, I use the idea of a plumber. You contract a plumber in to fix your clogged pipe, and they know what to do. They know how to do their job. They do it. They invoice you. You pay them. Same thing with a therapist. So this gets problematic when we have an early career clinician or a candidate who's contracted, and it's like, well, where is their oversight? How are we making sure that they're
Hmm.
getting
Right,
supported? In a contractor model, they have outside supervision. So
right.
previous video, as we talked about supervision, now applies here. So there's pros and cons to both contractor and employee, but I think we just wanted to pull back the curtain on some of those expenses, what it looks like for the group practice owner to fund a lot of the things, which is that W-2 employee model of maybe now they're funding a training for the team. Maybe they're looking at those benefits and health insurance, which is a huge expense for a contractor to pay out of
Yeah.
pocket
Hmm.
if they're truly on their own. Are they is the group practice owner paying for retreats and days off and PTO and some things like that? Contractor, you're doing all of that for yourself, is making those financial decisions. So it depends on what model you like better. In Colorado, we have way more employee models happening than contractor now, and that's, I think, based on some things that have happened in our community. And we just want early career clinicians to know about it and be like, hey,
Hmm.
make an informed choice that's right for you, knowing here are the pros and cons. So hopefully this has been enlightening to think about expenses. Business is expensive. Therapy businesses are expensive, especially with marketing, keeping the doors open. We have a brick and mortar location. But I think mainly the benefits that you and I talked about, Ashley, of like health insurance, family, PTO.
Right.
There's so many different laws here in Colorado that group practice owners have to follow. And that might
Mhm.
mean investing in a lawyer or investing in an HR professional to make sure
Mhm.
that they're covering all the things.
Yep,
So that's a huge expense. That's not a cheap one at all.
absolutely.
That a lot of people don't think about. They're just like, oh,
Mhm.
here's what's coming in. You must be getting all of it. And it's like, nope, they have lots of things they have to pay for. So, last thoughts on this topic as I think about expenses of a therapy business.
I just encourage whatever side you're on, if you're doing the hiring or you're a worker, I encourage people to be transparent. I know it's uncomfortable to talk about money. You know better than I do all of the emotions tied to finances as well. But I think the more we talk about it, the more we can understand one another. And frankly, like the better we feel. It's not going to feel good if you think your employer is making $1 million a year and taking advantage of you. And I think the only way to get rid of that discomfort is to talk about it and ask questions and be vulnerable. And, hopefully the other person is able to provide you with an open and honest conversation.
Yeah. And know that this is a decision you get to make. You get to work
Mhm.
for an
Yeah.
employer that does a W-2, it's a contractor. Some of you will be like, I'm going to go off on my own.
Mhm.
And even on your own, there are expenses in a business, right? So, like, hopefully, this video catches kind of all of people at all stages of their careers. Because if you're not working for someone else, you might be launching your own therapy
Mhm.
practice. And some of these expenses apply to you too. So, lots to think about here. This was kind of overarching broad strokes, knowing that each state is different. The numbers are different in each state when it comes to what things cost. But hopefully, this gives you some food for thought as you think about working for someone else or launching your own business. Stay tuned for more videos. Ashley, thanks so much for the conversation. We'll see everyone next time.